Does this count as ASMR?
I think this is best pitched as the hastily arranged ramble that it is. I don't think there should be any pretense of preparation here.
Do we have any we don't have any follow-up or anything, do we?
No.
We have nothing.
That's what happens when you don't make an episode in 2.5 months. Actually, no, 2.5 is harsh. 2.
Well, we made episode 42 in November. I just didn't get around to editing it. We recorded it in November.
Oh, yeah, but we didn't have any intention of putting that out until now.
The intent was now, but it is weird.
We also did it as an extra thing, rather than our only output for 2 months.
Don't tell them that. Don't tell them that everything went a bit wrong.
Sorry, I'm just pulling back the curtain here.
Oh, dear.
I'm all about the behind the scenes.
Here's some behind the scenes. Ryan's editing this episode.
Yeah, so if it seems like the editor didn't care, that's why.
Less work for me, though. That's the important thing.
That is the important thing. I'm made of time and you're not, so I will sacrifice myself and the listeners will sacrifice themselves. Hang on, I edited the last one.
You did edit the last one, to be fair. Yeah, you did also.
Although that was not a typical editing job, let's say.
I will be honest, I did go through and clean it up a little bit.
Oh, that's fine by me. I did realise afterwards that I'd edited it without headphones on.
Yeah, so the thing, this is, right, we can cut this. But the thing that I noticed with headphones on is I think you do a noise gate in Audacity?
Oh no, you were meant to do the noise gate afterwards for me.
But there's like, I don't know what caused it, but there's like weirdness where you've cut stuff where there's like 1/10 of a second of just absolute silence, not even like the background noise, and like even just removing, even doing like the noise filter to remove the background hum from the microphone doesn't change it. It's very strange in an audio recording to have samples that are just zero.
Yeah, that's my bad because I wasn't listening with headphones back to it.
And it did sound very weird, but yeah, I've dealt with that. It's
nice
fine.
One.
But yeah,
good man. That's staying in now.
No,
well, you know why? Because it's less work.
No,
this is going out raw.
Oh god.
Anyway, let's do useful things. Bugglebots has begun. Your thoughts on Bugglebots?
It has begun. I enjoyed the first episode. I think it was quite good. I think there's, as ever, room for improvement, but it was quite good.
Of course. Incredibly good quality for a web series. I think the camera work in particular was probably better than the first rebooted series of Robot Wars was.
I think they had a slightly better idea of what they're aiming for and how to sort of do it. And I think the other probably advantage here is that they've got a much smaller arena to work with.
I mean, that must help. But, you know, the fact that they haven't decided to barely light their arena also makes quite a big difference.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed sort of watching how it's, in terms of its style and its tone, it's Robot Wars inspired, but it's not trying to be a direct clone either, which some other series have kind of tried to do, and I don't think that ever really works out. I think when you try to fully emulate something, unless you absolutely nail it, that becomes really obvious. Yeah. Whereas by putting their own style on it, the presenting as well, I think is a very good start. People don't understand how hard it is to interview people. Interviewing people is really difficult.
Yeah.
And as soon as any series like this, or any live stream as well, manages to do that well, that to me is a big green tick.
I think watching the presenters in this, I think if this had happened like even 6 months ago, I probably wouldn't have thought anything of it, and then I might even have sort of like been overly critical of it. But having recently tried to sort of do semi-scripted stuff, or sort of like presenting something in a more formal way than what we do on Spinnerproof and stuff, it's astonishingly hard to do that and have it not just sound horrifically awkward. And they've done an amazing job, I think, of making all their presenting sound perfectly natural. Really, like it's really good.
Again, I'm just really, really impressed with the quality of it. I think the quality of fights for this episode didn't live up to the quality of production, but everything that I'm hearing from people that were involved is that that's something that we're going to see go up over the sort of coming episodes.
Yeah.
Really disappointed with the amount of people who seems to have written it off purely based on the fights in the first episode.
Yeah, it's disappointing, but also not surprising, I think.
I don't know, I think people have been kind of spoiled by the way that BattleBots has been in terms of the curated fights. They could guarantee themselves a really strong opening episode. And we know that Robot Wars as well rejigged the episode order to put something strong up front. And I think all that's happened here is they have decided, for whatever reason, not to do that. And that's fine.
I think
you are going to have variable quality across any series that is based on a live sporting event.
I suspect that the people who have made Bugglebots have probably learnt a heck of a lot doing it, and I wouldn't be surprised if, after filming it all and stuff, they probably wanted to rearrange things a little bit. But then if you're not planning to do that ahead of time, you'll have situations in the audio where a competitor or someone doing an interview specifically references what round they're in, and that becomes a problem to edit because it completely breaks continuity. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the next series, and I really hope there is a next series, in the next one, if they're a bit more careful possibly about what's being said like live in the recording, and then leaving things like the heat order and stuff to be done in post.
I did actually try to go back through it earlier, specifically to check if that had happened, but ended up just watching it again and not being as critical as I was trying to be. Although I did notice actually something that I missed when it first came up. I have received the most generous graphics credit in the history of the medium for the roughly 20 minutes of work I put in to one thing before it was even shot. So, guys, thank you for that. That was very kind. You didn't have to. I did nothing.
Yeah, but you
I did nothing of worth.
Now your name's out there, though.
I know. I mean, it's on the CV anyway, of course.
Yeah. Ryan Bradley, graphic designer.
Ryan Bradley can use the colour yellow. What are you hoping for from the rest of the series, then?
I just think sort of continued good fights, really. Or I say continued. I want good fights. I think I'm going to be quite honest here and say the fights in this episode were not brilliant. I mean, there are a couple of like interesting moments, but overall the fights themselves were a bit of a letdown. So yeah, I really hope, and like you said, like there's from reading around online and stuff, and from seeing the preview of the next episode and stuff, like it looks like there's going to be some good fights. So I'm excited to see those, and I just really want this to be successful because I really want them to do it again, and I'd love it if it were a bit more of like an open applicant type thing.
I think it was open applications.
Was it? I thought it was like invite only, but
if you go on their YouTube channel, there is an applications trailer from ages ago.
Fair enough. Well,
you got plans?
Well, you know. I mean, we've built a robot.
We are high level robot builders now.
We are in the process of designing a second one, and a Mark III would be an interesting in a bigger scale.
I mean, all you have to do is take the CAD that you've done and like blow it up a bit.
Yeah, times 1.5 or whatever.
Yeah, it's pretty easy stuff. I think this is definitely a challenge we're up to. No, seriously, watching it immediately rekindled my sort of desire to compete.
And I think the thing, this is, I really don't want this to sound critical in any way, but watching this and seeing the robots that are in there feels far more achievable than seeing the robots that are in Robot Wars. Partly, I think there's partly of it is just a quality thing, which is the bit that sounds a bit more critical than I intend it to be. And obviously a bigger part of it is just, beetle weights are buildable by normal people and trying to lug a 130 kilogram heavyweight around, or however, or 100 or whatever it is they are.
It'll be 130 by the time you got all your tools with you.
Yeah. So it's just like that difference in scale as well. Just sort of like watching this, and unlike watching Robot Wars, watching this thinking I could be on that. Like I could build a robot that's that big and could compete in that. So that, which is really exciting. It's really cool to see that. So yeah, I really want there to be a second one, and I'd like to enter. Whether or not I actually do, or we do, or whatever.
I think it would be rude not to. There'd be some details to work out, but
yeah,
the world needs more silly thwackbots. Which, we are now locked into as a design for the rest of our lives.
It does feel a bit ridiculous to me that, like, me, as the character that often advocates for competitive robots, seems to have landed himself in a situation where he's most likely to build a largely uncompetitive but hopefully very funny thwackbot.
I think the defining moment in our podcasting relationship and our friendship in general came a couple of weeks ago when we were working on Split Decision Mark II, and you used the phrase, "Let's not optimise the fun out of this." Which is the least Spinnerproof Sam comment I think I could possibly imagine.
Well, there you go. People change. People grow,
So that leads us nicely on to Split Decision Mark II.
Yeah, and the way you've written it in the show notes makes me want to say split decision.
I've noticed that, I consider myself an okay typist. Every time I try to write split decision, I end up replacing the T with a D, so it comes out as split decision. Which is, it's slowly becoming my actual name for the robot.
Just writing with an American accent.
Precisely, yeah. I think it's fair to say we learned a lot from Mark 1.
We did.
As much fun as we had, we've identified a lot of things that we can improve.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could quickly go over what Split Decision Mark 1 is and how it came about, really.
I entirely forget that people don't necessarily know what the hell we're talking about.
So if you want, so we have done, we did a bonus. So Spinnerproof has a bonus feed that you may or may not know that, because I don't think we've ever spoken about it on the main show. But on the website, I think you can go to spinnerproof.com/bonus, I think. But on the website, there's another feed you can go to with some bonus episodes. And I think one of them is talking about RoboNerd and designing Split Decision if you want a bit more. But I guess the short version is we went to RoboNerd earlier in the year and we wanted to build a robot, but we only sort of decided this about a week before the event and did the thing that I must have complained about so many times and then rushed the build out at the last minute. And that was a real education in itself. Just going through that process of building a robot at all, doing it last minute, and then getting to the end and finding it's overweight, and the only way to deal with that is to remove the tires, which cut me so deeply. But yeah, so that's what we did. But Split Decision is a thwackbot. It's like a mini Gabriel, I suppose.
It is. Really. It is basically just tiny black Gabriel. That's all it is. Let's not shy away from that fact. But with a significantly lower build quality and a scalpel for a weapon.
Yes, a plastic scalpel. I guess the most competent part of it is the wheels that someone else made because they're 3D printed.
You see, I want to defend the build of Split Decision.
I think it's great. I think
it's made in a surprisingly elegant way.
Given that we built that, I mean, I reckon we spent 12...
Given that we built
it, no. In 12 hours, I think, at the most, because it was like all of one Sunday or something, and then a couple of evenings after that. So I reckon we spent around 12 hours working on it, having never built a robot before. And I'm not going to say that we're anything other than rubbish, but I'm impressed that we built anything that works and works as well as that does in 12 hours with no experience. It's sort of astonishing to me.
And bear in mind, we had it working inside about 5.
Yeah, we had a functioning prototype pretty quickly. Yeah,
it was all the other stuff like making it safe.
Yes.
And making it compliant with the rules that took the time.
Yeah.
We ended up spending about 2 or 3 hours on the morning of the event. It was actually quite a long time in the end trying to shed weight.
Yeah.
So I remember we were quite late.
We were a bit later than we intended to be. But there you go.
So much fun with that robot. Driving is hard. That was a big lesson.
Yeah, so I have really mixed feelings about how hard it is to drive that robot, because on the one hand, it's impossible to drive. Well, not impossible because people did it, but not us, but people. So other people managed it.
Another better Sam, for one.
Yeah. So on the one hand, it's really hard to drive, and that's frustrating to lose fights really quickly because I just can't control the robot. But on the other hand, it is also a lot of fun when you get occasional moments of glory with it, and that is so satisfying. And it's something. It's rubbish in just the right way. That I'm so glad we captured because it's such a. I mean, I really like it. So
it's useless in what I consider a very British way, in that it kind of handicaps itself almost wantonly.
Yeah. To
the point where just being able to use it correctly once becomes the goal. Anything beyond that is a bonus. It is the least ambitious machine we could possibly have built.
I don't know about that. I think a box on wheels would be less ambitious.
I'd say that a thwackbot like this is the simplest design there is.
Yeah.
Not that we made it look easy. We made it look pretty difficult. I suppose for me, the other lesson is just how tough these things can be. We tried really hard to kill it.
Yeah, we went to town by the end of the day trying to get it broken and never managed it.
Yeah, How long did we spend in the Beetleweight Arena that day? We must have been in there a good sort of 20, 25 minutes.
I was in there for a long time on a single battery charge. So that's the first thing that surprised me is how long it lasts on a charge. I guess it's not fair to say that it never broke. Like, it did get broken because one of the wheels got split in half at some point.
Oh yeah, but we ran away, and 30 seconds of the glue gun, it was good to go again.
Yeah, and then after everything was sort of glued a bit more, because like, I think when we originally built it, I had aspirations of being able to take it apart again and recycle the inner components. Having now taken it to an event, and I'm quite attached to it now, so I don't think even if I could take it apart, I'm not sure I'd want to. But like the way the wheels were designed was that they sort of like mounted around these hubs that came with them, because I think I just bought the whole kit from
Nuts and Bots.
Yeah. So that the printed wheel was like clipped around those hubs, and then that's the failure that broke in the end. When we got hit by an axe, is they split down that line, and then we just glued it back on. And so they're pretty. I mean, it could be undone, but they're a bit more permanent now. But after that point, I mean, we took a couple of hits from a big hammer, and it kept going. Thrown out of the arena at least twice.
I think at this point, the original split decision now runs until it dies.
No modifications.
Nothing else is appropriate.
Yeah.
It is the little robot that could.
I think the only thing we should do is possibly replace the scalpel.
No, I like the old broken scalpel.
I think something a bit more durable would be good.
I think something a lot more durable would be good. But, we've got to stay within weight. We should point out as well, it wasn't quite built to normal amp weight rules.
Mm.
The rules for Robo Nerd were still 150 grams, but instead of the 4-inch cube, it was a 4x4x6 cuboid. And we really made use of that.
Yeah.
And that, I think, has been the single biggest challenge of designing Mark II, is getting it to fit within that 4x4x4. I mean, the wheels alone were what? 3.5?
No, the wheels are basically a 4-inch diameter. They're 100mm diameter wheel on Mark I. So yeah, like the wheels alone, before we put a weapon on it, take it up, and then we used the full 6 inches that we had to put a weapon on there.
Would you like to take us through the current design for Mark II?
I don't know if it's also worth possibly going over the constraints that we have in terms of like the materials that we have access to and the tools that we have. So
and
like
the skill ceiling as well.
And the skill ceiling that we have. Yeah, so like there's no workshop here. This is, we just sort of built it all in my flat, in our living room, with no power tools, basically. And that's probably going to be the constraint for the next one as well. It's going to be all hand tools apart from a cordless drill.
And that drill was the bane of my life.
So there's that, and we don't have a 3D printer. And there's a colleague of mine at work that does, but I think it'd be quite nice. Just the spirit of just not using a 3D printer, I think, is something that'd be quite important. So basically, we've got ABS to work with, possibly some sheet metal like aluminium or very thin titanium if we feel ambitious. But it's probably going to stick to being ABS. We've got the thermo-moldable plastic stuff that may or may not get used again. That's what formed the backbone of Mark I in terms of the chassis, with a combination of that and ABS.
Can we just talk about that chassis design for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
My single favourite part of Split Decision, it's literally a cuboid.
Yeah.
And we decided that we needed two sort of inner supports, which were quite a complex shape. And we sat there for I don't know how long, forming a mould out of foam board and tin foil to press this plastic into. We made it. We were kings of the world for about 5 minutes. And then we realised that it was about twice as big as it needed to be, and spent the next 2 hours trying to chop pieces out of it.
Yeah. We learnt a lot doing that.
I still maintain it was the best possible build method. The problem we had is that we were literally cutting ABS by scoring it with a scalpel and snapping it.
Yeah, so we could do straight cuts only.
Absolutely no way that we could have got a proper 90-degree angle to actually bond any two faces. So having that little internal support that we could just bolt things to really worked for us.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is bolted together, really, isn't it? Other than the wheels being glued on.
Yeah.
Everything else, the wheels and the weapon are the only bits that are glued. Everything else is bolted together.
Includes it. We also had that great moment where we realised that we had no way of attaching the final panel.
Oh, yeah.
We spent ages trying to work out how to do a captive nut, and then realised that we could just glue the bolt in and nut from the outside.
Yeah. Nut from the outside. Title.
I'll go with it. What was the other big mistake that happened?
I put the switch and the LED on the wrong side at some point.
I mean, the LED is a story in itself.
Oh, God, that LED.
The ridiculously bright LED.
I guess the context for that is half of my degree is electrical engineering, and I got the wrong resistor for this LED. And so it's needlessly bright, which I think adds to the charm. It really makes me laugh.
It's going to be a feature from now on.
Yeah, so that's...
You've got to up the LED-ness on every single version from here.
Oh, dear. So
version 6 is just going to be a laser pointer.
Oh, God, yeah. So there's that, and then, like gluing using super glue. So I very carefully checked which side the switch needs to be pushed through from so that the switch body is inside the robot. And I checked it, and I marked it as well. And then... when I came to glue it on, I glued it from the wrong side.
Didn't I also do that with the logo in the end?
The logo was on the wrong side as well. We fixed that one by just reprogramming the transmitter, though, and just changing which side was the front.
Yeah, the whole thing was just a process of realising exactly what we didn't know. And I feel like we're going to have that all again with Mark II, because we're being so much more ambitious with the way we're building it.
Mm.
You know, the fact that we have, for example, planned it.
Yep. This is planned, which is a new thing for us.
Yeah, first of all in 2D, now in 3D.
Yeah,
well, soon to be in 3D.
Soon to be in 3D.
Partly in 3D.
Quite a lot of it's done now, actually. I've done a reasonably accurate model of a scalpel, which I need to cut up and
because that was the priority.
It's funny doing CAD because it's sort of like it's a real balance between because I could model things like motors as just a box because that's the important thing is the dimensions. But then because I have no idea, so I'm using Fusion 360, and because I don't really know how it works, a good way to learn how it works is to just do the most accurate model of something that you have in your hand, because just copying a physical thing into the computer is a lot easier than trying to sort of design it in the computer. And that's sort of the really interesting thing where I can do really accurate models now of like the motors that we're using, and I've done quite an accurate model of the scalpel that we're going to use.
It's a really impressive model of a scalpel where you've seemingly modelled the blade separately.
Yeah, so I'm going to do the blade separately.
Why?
Well, because it's just easier.
Yeah, easier, sure.
So there's all that. But like when it comes to actually sort of trying to design and lay out how it all's going to work inside, that's harder to do. That's a lot harder for me to get. I still haven't quite figured out the movement, like moving objects around and I don't know.
So before we did the CAD, I did... what's the name for the sort of layup I did?
Yeah, you did like a front elevation, a side elevation.
Yeah, a sort of three-way projection of it.
Yeah.
And from that, I was able to basically work out... we're planning to construct this by basically taking layers of ABS and cutting out the bits we need to make a 3D thing.
Yeah, if you imagine how a 3D printer works of layering up plastic, but instead of making the layers 0.1 millimeters, they're 2 millimeters.
Yeah, or think William Osborne, Vin Diesel out of Ham, that kind of thing, which
Yeah.
I forced Sam to watch and he did not enjoy. That's the kind of principle. So I managed to do a reasonably good version of that just using the vector graphics software that I use.
Which is Inkscape, because people might ask.
Very true. The issue with that is that if we want to make any changes to it whatsoever, I've got to do them manually. Whereas if we can get it working on the CAD, we can make changes to it and then just take from that the slices we need, which is going to be so much easier. So it was a really useful exercise for me, especially to make that, and a good proof of concept, but I think doing it the way that you're doing it with the CAD is now the way to go.
Oh, yeah, I think going through that, because we sat down together one evening and did quite a lot of sketching, and we did the first initial sketches here together in Inkscape, and doing that was enough for us to know that this was an idea that was going to work. And we sort of answered a bunch of questions about how big things need to be. Like we sort of dialed in the dimensions of this robot just in 2D drawings, and then transferring it to 3D will answer a whole bunch more questions. So I think we've already in 3D, I'm a bit more confident about where the battery is going to go, and confident that we can make the robot narrower than we originally thought, because you can just sort of see that it's really hard to tell in 2D if the weapon is going to intersect with the battery. Whereas as soon as you put it in 3D and you can move it around, you can go, oh, there's a big space just here that I didn't really see before, and we know that we can make it a bit narrower if we need to and stuff. So yeah, 3D is useful. I'll put some links in the show notes for some really good tutorials on Fusion 360 if you want to learn it.
Do we want to put in some of our designs, or do we keep those as kind of military secrets?
We can put some screenshots in of what I've done so far.
I mean, I feel like anyone that wants to copy this design hasn't got a lot of legwork to do. So, to me, the real value of actually planning the design rather than just building it is that rather than going, here's a box, let's fill it with stuff, we've gone, here's some stuff, let's build a box around it.
Yeah.
And what we're going to come out with because of that is something that, A, we can actually fit inside the rules, which I really don't think we could have done with the original.
No, there's no
But
way of...
B, more importantly, something that we can actually get inside and service. Because the original, if anything came loose in there, I have no idea how we would fix it. It took me, on the morning of the event, about half an hour to bolt the motors back in. Because I'd removed them to try and change something that really didn't need changing. I was trying to save about 2 grams of weight, which turned out to be pointless because we just took the tyres off anyway. Things like that, I think, are going to be the thing we... when we've made this, that's the thing that we're going to be... Thank God we did CAD.
Yeah. What I'm hoping is that Mark II is every bit as ridiculous as Mark I, but just much more serviceable and compliant. That's the hope.
And as we were saying earlier, we definitely haven't optimised the fun out of it. If anything, we've utilised the better planning to just make it slightly stupider visually.
Should we tell them about that?
I'm not sure the stupidity of it is going to come across unless we point it out to people.
No, which is even funnier, really.
I think I'm really worried that people might look at it, hear that we planned it properly, and go, "Oh, they must have done that because it was needed to make it work internally." It's like, nope, this made our lives harder.
Yeah, right. So the stupidity, right? So if you imagine this robot from the side and you take a wheel off, you just got a square is the side profile. And if you imagine making that into a thwackbot, you're going to have a weapon that comes vertically straight up out the middle. And we were thinking a little bit about how to make this a bit more unique. And I think, Ryan, you just sketched the same thing, but with the weapon just tilted 30 degrees, so it just doesn't line up with anything. And it was honestly one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It just really cracked me up. And so that's what we're going to do, which just makes everything about building it much harder.
I advocated very strongly for keeping the layers we're constructing it out of perpendicular to the weapon rather than all the internal components,
God.
Which weirdly Sam wasn't on board with.
Well, that'd just be unnecessary.
We like a challenge.
Not that much of a challenge.
We're high-level robot builders now. Come on.
There's a balance between challenge and having a robot that's, buildable.
I mean, it'd be buildable, just not necessarily buildable well.
Buildable by us.
We can build anything.
Is that so?
Whether we can make it work or make it compliant with the rules is the real question.
Yeah.
Talking of which, by the way, I've had so much fun doing all the maths with this.
Yeah?
I have a whole big spreadsheet. Have you seen my spreadsheet?
I have not seen your spreadsheet.
You've not seen my spreadsheet. After this, I'm going to show you my spreadsheet, and you're going to be very impressed. I've been working out the weight of the robot before we build it.
Have you? I will love to compare what you reckon it's going to be compared to what it actually is.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
I've made some
I don't care
very
if you're happy.
wild
We're doing
assumptions. It's a knowingly loose estimate, but at present, based on the parameters of what I designed, I haven't seen what you've designed yet. At present, we're coming out at 136.9 grams.
0.9.
0.9. I only said that because I realised I'd forgotten to round on the unit there. So as things stand, we're coming out with weight to spare, which is what we thought was happening all through the process last time until we put the wheels on.
Yeah.
And then suddenly we were up at like 160.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to weigh 130, whatever it was, 0.9. 139.9? 140 grams, that's what I'm going to call it. What was it? What was your number?
I can give you it exactly if you'd like. 136.91112.
God. I think it's going to weigh almost exactly 150 again.
I think it will eventually, yeah. We'll get it up to that. But as things are planned, that's where it should come out.
Well, I look forward to seeing how accurate that is.
If at any point we put it on a scale and it comes out at 137, I'm calling that victory.
I think you should, yeah. If you're within 1 gram, I'll give you that victory.
At what stage does it have to be within that 1 gram?
Well, so like built to the point that you've designed it, I guess, because I reckon there are things.
Oh yeah, so the only thing this doesn't account for is bolts.
Yeah, so if everything minus bolts is within 1 gram, I'll give you that. If you want to recalculate that with, bolts.
Already I have just sort of estimated a scalpel at an arbitrary 25 grams, so which I think is too much.
Well, within 1 gram, that's your target. I'll be curious to see how, because I presume that Fusion has ways of weighing things.
Yeah, if you enter the density of the material you are using for certain things, I believe it can do that.
Once I've done a complete CAD, including bolts, I'll see what the computer reckons.
I mean, I am human CAD now.
I don't know what else I have to say about Split Decision Mark II.
I suppose because I hadn't realised that we didn't put the RoboNerd thing out as a proper episode, I suppose now is a good time to just say again what a great event that was, and how just how nice it was to be able to go in there as people that I think quite clearly didn't know what they were doing and still be accepted into that little gang, and to get a little bit of appreciation from people about our robot. That meant a lot.
One of my favourite, so I guess a bit more self-promotion. I made a video, like vlog thing. I could put that in quotes. Vlog in quotes about going there. In editing it and occasionally like rewatching it just because I enjoyed going there. There's a moment that you can hear, because like every now and again we just like hand the controller for Split Decision away and just be like, someone else have a go on it. And for one, I really like that people had a go with it. But one of the bits that I quite like is that at some points, like, someone's like, who else wants to go with Split Decision? Like, just everyone else sharing it around. So yeah, it is a very welcoming event. And yeah, I'm excited to do more. Split Decision Mark III, Beetle weight.
Oh yes,
you heard it here first.
No, it isn't quite a Beetle weight. Beetle weight's a 1.5 kilos.
Mm-hmm.
We built one that's 1,350 grams, originally as a mini bot. Heard it here first. It's got to die sometime.
Can you do mini bots in Beetle weight competitions?
If you can't, then we're not entering. It's a condition of our entry that we get to take it in as a mini bot.
Oh dear, we'll make our own tournament with blackjack and hookers.
And scene.
You can find the show notes for this episode at spinnerproof.com/episode/43, and there you can find links to stuff we've been talking about today. You can also find a link to our Twitter at Spinnerproof, where you can tweet to us your favourite tiny robot.
I basically just slammed down every thought I had, then immediately went out for like a 2-hour walk and never got round to paring it down into something useful.
Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna look at your enter key quickly.
I know. This keyboard has no right side control key.
Is this an HP? Yeah. Well, I think I'm just never gonna buy an HP laptop.
I selected it because I went in to see it physically. I was buying it online, but went to see it physically.
Yeah.
Just to check it had a full-size keyboard.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise that not having a right-hand control key was an option. The enter key, I'm fine with. The little compacted up and down keys, I'm fine with. That lack of a right control is awful.
You've got a backslash instead.
I know. They have compacted this keyboard in the weirdest way possible. They've gone for a really wide left shift key that could be half that width. Could have had that slash key there. Yep. Could have had a control key in the normal place. Oh no. HP do not roll that way.
And that would be, if you put it to the right of the left shift key, that would be like a normal place for it as well.
Yeah, that's just where it goes. Also, really annoying because I use the vertical bar a lot.
What do you use a pipe for?
Because when I'm doing football club stuff on Twitter, our sort of formatting style involves that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not a happy man, but I've now got used to it.
It's funny because I use it, although I laugh at you having a backslash down there, like I use a backslash an awful lot of work.
Yeah, but you don't need to have that near your right hand when you could just have it on your left. You know how to use a keyboard.
It should be, yeah. I mean, it should be. It is exactly where you said it should be. It's over there. That's where it should be.
That's where it lives. That's its home.
This is a shockingly useful.
Is it too good for its home?
This is the most useful key that no one ever knows about.
That's basically a right-click key, isn't it?
Yeah, but no one ever uses it. I mean, it doesn't work.
Yeah, because you're usually holding a mouse.
Well, I'm not.
Oh, just because you're a high-level user.
But it's amazingly useful. But it doesn't work on a Mac. Like, that key just does nothing. And it's infuriating.
Don't use a Mac, then?
Well, if I had a choice at work... Actually, I said I probably could not use a Mac if I pushed hard enough. But
if they hadn't spent all the money on all the Macs.
If they hadn't already spent, like, $4,000 on my computing setup...
Is the work you do sort of quite intensive on the computer?
It can get quite CPU intensive, yeah, because we run virtual machines, so like it won't. I'll have
yes.
I'll be on a Mac, but I'll have like a Windows VM and a Linux VM running often. So it's quite RAM and CPU intensive. And then the build, when we do like a full rebuild of the product, that is, I mean, I would say it's quite CPU intensive just because like the MacBook suddenly sounds like a jet engine taking off. But I think that's more a criticism of the MacBook's cooling capacity than the actual CPU usage.
Don't they just use the whole case as a heatsink?
Oh god, yeah.
I've never noticed any holes on them.
So they are there, they're hidden. What I find great is, so the CPU and the GPU on the MacBook Pros are towards the back, like near the bottom of the screen. If I point on your laptop, they're about here. Like just imagine under the function row, right? And that's not normally a big deal because like the function row is this button. And it doesn't conduct heat very much, right? Because it's just a series of plastic buttons, and so it doesn't. You don't really notice it unless you're touching the metal or touching the case around it. But on the new MacBook Pros, they've got this touch bar thing, which is a glass touchscreen. Now, glass conducts heat more, I would say. I don't know how good it is in general, but it conducts, I think, more heat. It certainly, and because for things like volume stuff, you're not just like tapping a volume button. You're like pressing, holding, and dragging a slider. And when your laptop's been working hard with the CPU and the GPU, that's so damn hot, it's unreal.
Is this the peak of the first world problems?
Yes,
I get burnt by my MacBook.
I get burnt by my MacBook that I didn't buy. Someone else has bought for me.
The MacBook that you are paid to use.
Yes.
More importantly.
Yes.
That's right. I'm a big fan of this laptop because, as stupid as I think this is, the exhaust fan is down, sort of pointing up at the screen, as though you were trying to defog the windscreen in your car.
Yeah. Which
I'm fairly sure isn't a very good way of getting the heat out, but it does mean that it's not on your lap.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that massively.
I think that's how it works on the MacBooks. I think they've got like slots down the left and right just under it, and then the exhaust comes under the screen in the same way as that one does.
Come to think of it, I think I did notice that when I was looking at yours recently now.
Yeah.
The issue, of course, is that with this, the air intake is still on the bottom. So if I'm using it in bed, which I usually am, and I've got it on like a duvet, that just completely blocks all of the air intake.
My super fun thing is that, so like I don't use the laptop at work as a laptop. I just have it with the lid closed, plugged into a big screen. So I feel like its cooling is just utterly neutered when I've got it on my desk at work.
But at least you don't burn yourself on it that way.
At least I don't burn myself. At least my full-size keyboard without a touch bar doesn't burn me.